This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on AFR Talk. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at onenewsnow.com. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us at any time at focalpoint@afr.net. Focalpoint@afr.net.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point. AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. You are listening to Focal Point on AFR Talk, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. I've got a special guest in our studio. Just before we get to him, I want to close the loop on the greatest food in human history, the McDonald's McDouble cheeseburger. You can get it at 14,000 locations. It only costs $1. It is the cheapest, most nutritious, and bountiful food that has ever existed in human history. This according to the New York Post. And he counters the lie that fast food makes us fat. He says that people who eat out tend to eat less at home that day in partial compensation. The net gain is about 24 calories a day if you eat fast food. And here he talks about the impact on the budget. Junk food costs about $1.76 per 1,000 calories. That's about $3.52 for a 2,000 calorie day of meals. If you're going to stick strictly to the good for you stuff, the organic stuff, it could cost you $36.32 a day. So there you have it. McDonald's McDouble cheeseburger, the most nutritious and bountiful and cheapest food that has ever existed. They've come out with an artificial hamburger, by the way, that's grown from the stem cells of a cow. It's made from meat grown in a laboratory rather than cattle raised in pastures. 5-ounce Frankenburger is made from 3,000 tiny strips of meat grown from the stem cells of a cow. The raw meat is said to be gray with a slippery texture similar to squid or scallop. Thanks. I think I'm going to stick with the McDonald's McDouble cheeseburger. Now, enough of all that. I want to get to our special guest, Nick Dean, who is a writer for the AFA Journal. Got a piece coming out in the AFA Journal September issue, which will be available soon. Encourage you, if you aren't signed up to receive the AFA Journal, go to afajournal.net and you can get signed up, or go to afa.net and you can get to the journal. Nick Dean, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Nick, you're with us just for a short time, so just tell us how you got here and what you're doing here.
Okay.
Before we talk about your piece.
I am a rising senior at Union University, and basically just through some strange family connections over a mission trip, got hooked up with the editor of the Journal, Randall Murphy, and he basically through my emails, I guess he picked up on something and decided to offer me a job for the summer, and so I'll be here for another 2 weeks.
Well, it's been great to have you around, Nick, and you've got a piece that'll be in the September 2013 AFA Journal, and I think I just got a text from my wife about when that is going to become available. Let me get the correct information on that. September issue of the Journal will be out towards the end of August, so this will be coming out here in just a few weeks, give you kind of a sneak preview of what's in the September edition of the AFA Journal, and again, encourage you to sign up for this magazine. And Nick, your piece here, you know, we are aware of addictions that involve alcohol, drugs, pornography, but what you were writing about here is another possible addiction that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's easy for us to ignore the pitfalls that are right in front of us. You know, I reference John Calvin later in this article, and in his Institutes, he compared the human heart to an idol factory. And with technology and our tech-based culture, we've established the ultimate of idols. You know, in the Garden of Eden, we were placed in creation to tend to nature in fellowship with the rest of creation. And that's a point of vulnerability and responsibility and control that isn't completely ours. And instead of doing that, we've created a tech-based world of our own creation that we can control, and we no longer put ourselves at a vulnerable position that we see. But in fact, we are incredibly vulnerable. And what I talk about in the article is just really straightforward ways in which we become addicted. I reference
And addicted to what in particular?
behaviors associated with the use of technology.
Okay, so this is kind of an addiction to technology and addiction to social media. And I'm guessing most of the people listening to us talk know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, they can picture in their head being in some situation where everybody is together and nobody's talking to each other, nobody's looking at each other, they're all buried in their smartphones.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure all of my college professors could attest to, everybody in class being on their computers and maybe 3% of the students in the room actually being in the room rather than on Facebook. I mean, it really is so prevalent. And I don't mean to say that technology is completely bad by any means. In fact, I mean, I reference things in the article that have really good uses. But when we allow it to take such an important role in our lives, then it's just downhill.
Well, it's I guess like just about any other kind of advance or breakthrough, God has certain noble purposes for that technological advance, and Satan is going to be immediately looking for ways to turn that to his uses. Nuclear power, you can use that to blow people up, or you can use it to power plants and cities. So it's not that the technology, it's not that social media, it's not that the internet technology, it's not that stuff is bad in and of itself. It's neutral. The question is what kind of use to which we put it.
Right, absolutely. And so, in the article, I give a story of a husband and a father named Cord Campbell. The New York Times ran his story a couple years ago, and he was basically the epitome of a technophile. I mean, he was just absolutely immersed in this world, and it created a barrier between him and the rest of his family. And that's one of the implications of tech addiction that is so dangerous, and that AFA in particular is going to be so focused on, because it really can just put such a strain on the family, and not just on the individual. But
well, they had the misfortune of going on vacation. They were going to unplug on vacation, right? And then the iPad came out the day before they left, and what happened?
Cord couldn't resist buying the iPad, and his wife said, they didn't even go out for dinner that night. I mean, they just all stayed inside. They all got on their respective devices and just stayed plugged in.
Well, one of the things you talk about, talking here with Nick Dean, who's got a piece in the September AFA Journal called Addicted. And you pointed out that this addiction to technology, to social media, can actually have some implications on our brains, have implications on us physically, and have implications on character.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we hit the send button on a text, or if we open a new web browser and we're clicking and clicking and clicking, that causes what psychologists would call a stimulus-driven response. And what's going to happen is it takes advantage of the reward system in our brain, which is correlated to a neurotransmitter called dopamine, and it basically sets you up to want to keep on doing that. And you can think
it feels good, you get a little jolt, so you want more of that.
Yeah. And so, you could think of people who get on Facebook every 5 minutes just to see if...
and I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons I've kind of stayed away. I mean, I have a personal Facebook page. I use it very sparingly. I have a very limited number of friends that I have on Facebook, because I could easily see if you got on Facebook and as the number of friends grow, the number of people that you'd sort of like to keep in touch with or keep tabs on as that were to grow, you could spend an entire day doing nothing but following people on Facebook.
Right. And I mean, it is nothing. It's not a worthwhile task. Certainly there's ways to reach out to people and reconnect with old friends and things like that. But if you're using your whole day to just waste on Facebook, then you're wasting time.
And you've got a section here where you talk about the impact on relationships that we need to be concerned about with social technology and social media.
Yeah, well, when we get so engrossed in technology, it distances our relationship to others. And if you think about having a cell phone in your hand, I mean, you're literally keeping somebody at arm's length. And so when the University of Michigan did a study on empathy, and the results were that, generations today are showing about 40% less empathy levels than they were a few decades ago.
Well, and I think I would remember being struck by that. And apparently there was an especially steep drop just in the last 10 years, this drop in empathy. So that would correlate with the explosion in social media.
Absolutely. And so, taking that a step further, when you're surrounded by the technology, not only is it affecting your ability to empathize with others, but it can also sort of give you a bias on how you're going to approach others. I mean, think about sitcoms today that, or not even just today, but for years past, where parents are portrayed as these just idiotic, overbearing, or clueless individuals. If a kid sees that more than their own parent interacting with them in a healthy way, then that's what they're going to expect. And so they're going to project those characteristics onto their own parents. And it's just going to create an even greater distance than already happens during adolescence.
We've got about 90 seconds left, Nick, about 60 seconds actually. What can and what should Christians do about this?
Well, first of all, you got to realize that, again, this isn't, it isn't a bad thing in and of itself, technology. It's what we do with it. And so in the article, I suggest just a couple of ways that we can limit our use and use it for good purposes. One great way is just for parents to set an example. I mean, they need to limit their own time on the internet and on Facebook and in front of the TV so that their kids learn from that. But then use that time, fill that time with family time and actual interaction with each other. Another good way is to just have technology fasting days where you can use the whole day to just get together with the family and, engage in Bible study or prayer or just, going outside.
It's even interesting, Nick, at Christmas we have family together. We'll just play old-fashioned board games. Even that, getting away from the technology and it's face-to-face, you're laughing, enjoying each other. My guest has been Nick Dean, author of the piece Addicted in the September 2013 AFA Journal. Go to afajournal.org and sign up to get a copy. Nick, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for having me.
Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.